Yes, here we are. Team profile, reporting for duty.
Yeah, one thing I learned today is I met Baker, your cat. Yes. And yeah, we
He's an
talked.
important character in my
Yeah,
life. Yeah.
yeah. And we talked about cats actually today. So nice.
Are you angry?
Wow.
He's just waiting to bite me. But we were talking today also about like these ideas about femininity
Mhm.
and conventions for like gender presentation. Yeah, and it also occurs to me that there's well, we talked about belonging. We have had like the sense before of like kind of maybe fitting, but maybe not necessarily fitting. That there's a relationship to sort of like gendered expectations around that.
Mm. Yeah, and also the question of like who s- who defines it, what is like female and male, but not only this, but also like who defines it, what is it to be, for example, I don't know, a feminist woman, and how you should be when you are a feminist woman and how you should not be like.
Or even the stigma, the sort of still general stigma around identifying as feminist, that somehow I feel that there is this sort of gross generalization that means that you're like against men,
Mm, mm,
or that it means that you're not, like I think like there people assume things about sexuality often based on like your proximity or self-identification as feminist. I think that folks who like identify as femme or like femme spectrum within like queer culture often have to fight against these ideas that they're doing something that is in line with the patriarchy,
mm,
rather tn something that makes them feel powerful and empowered
mm.
around their bodies or presentations.
Yeah. And what we also did today is you showed me your work.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we spent some time on that. Yeah, what like how was that for you?
It was really, I'm really, how do you say, grateful or thankful. So thank you for sharing that to me. And like you explained a lot about it. And like I had really the feeling like that you also with your explanations and with your sharing your thoughts about it, I really understand it better and understand you, what you say better. And I really have the feeling that you shared a lot. Yeah, I'm really impressed, and it was really emotional for me.
Mm.
And it's really interesting because I have the feeling like I'm really impressed that this is possible via Zoom, this kind of intimacy, like yeah, it felt really emotional, and this is something maybe also for me a new experience that this can happen via Zoom, like this kind of intimacy.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, when we started out talking today, we were talking about like relationships and relationship models. Yeah, like I think one of the things that I sort of benefit from leading up to this time of pandemic is that I have maintained different types of intimate relationships via, video and phone, and been separated from
Mm.
and maintain a wide network of connectivity. Like I'm super excited because there's someone who I haven't seen in a while, who used to live in New York, who lives in Vienna, who I think I mentioned last time, who's a friend of mine. And just thinking about like, oh yeah, wow, like it caused me to be like, oh yeah, who are the other people that I have in Vienna,
Mm.
who I keep in touch with or who I haven't talked to in a while. And it's sort of like this, like being in closer touch with you is also making me think about being back in touch with other people who are located closer to you geographically than they are to me. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think it is a unique experience, and it's not always possible that
Mm.
you feel emotional or emotionally connected
Mm.
when you have some sort of like computer mediation, right? Some sort of technology. But it has been my experience, like there, it is possible.
Yeah, it's also interesting that we are talking now again about intimacy, because
Mhm.
we talked before, we talked about the different forms of intimacy, and like also when we talked about relationships, and we also talked about repetition.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, this I think is like I feel like these are like when finding common ground. Like these are the things that I think are going to start to build almost a bridge between our practices. Like I also really appreciated spending time with your work, and I feel like those are the like our first two meetings. We sort of we're getting to know each other. We're sort of sharing and finding out about each other, and then like the work is like you find out other aspects through the work, like it's a window to another part, and it is intimate, it feels intimate. And yeah, it was like for me really interesting to see these like through sort of thinking about your work and this in particular, this sort of most recent stuff, and being related, like that these pieces are related, that there's one part of it that sort of like happens with animals on farm in space,
Mm,
but then there's the other aspect about it that is staged, was also really like provocative, and within it I kept feeling like, oh yeah, this is like there's something in here about like unnoticed daily gestures, repetition, and like emotion. There were moments where I was surprised at how it brought emotion into my body to listen to you sprinkle the like little pellets or the feed onto the ground.
mm, mm.
The sounds of those falling, the sounds of like, I think there might be something that we can also build together that combines repetitive gesture in
Mm.
some like sound recordings. I think would be interesting to make for each other and to trade as well.
We talked about sound also a lot today, and about like music, and everything is music. Actually, in the end. Mm,
Yeah, and those minute like a cellular on a cellular level, that there's like
mm,
motion and sound. Yeah,
mm.
and then like thinking like on a sort of enormous level, it's emotional. Yeah, music. Yeah, I think music and sound is like really has that
Mm.
like a great potential to conjure emotion.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a great medium to transport emotions.
It's also, I was thinking also in like relationship to repetition. I
Mm.
mean, a piece of music like a score, ostensibly, I mean, I can imagine that these pieces of music that you, as a classically trained musician, that
Mm.
you're playing these notes that have been written in a certain way. It's the same set of notes.
Mm.
But we talked about last time, like about how that could have innumerable possible outcomes. That
Mm.
because the individual who plays the piece, even if it's it's played as it's written, will have different nuances and sounds.
Mm.
Like that's a kind of exciting idea too. Yeah, that the repetition, you're repeating the same thing, but you have like multiple possible outcomes.
Mm. Mm.
There's something interesting. Like I'm curious about reperformance, and there are a couple of people who I admire and adore, like Julie Tolentino, for instance, who does very specific performances where sometimes she collaborates with a performance artist like Ron Athey, and reperforms, like they reperform a piece that has from the past but together in the present, almost as a form of archiving.
Mm.
Like that archiving isn't necessarily just recording what has happened in the past, but that by performing it, reperforming it, reproducing it, like that's a type of archival process. You're sort of stretching backwards in time, sometimes hundreds of years.
For me, it's something really magic, actually, to play a piece which is like, which was written so long time ago, still interesting and still beautiful. I mean, to me. and it's not losing, it's not losing the energy, by getting older.
Yeah. Something vibrant about that expression that is enduring.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
I mean, in paintings or sculptures, you more or less have it the way it was built hundreds of years ago. I mean, of course, the color is different and so on, but like in music, it's like, and also in theater plays, of course, you have the things that are written down on paper, but you don't have the moment of performing. You
Yeah.
can you actually, we don't know how music pieces or also texts were performed um, that times. So this is something that really is really interesting somehow.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I mean, like, I'm kind of like I like to learn.
Mhm.
Like, I'm deeply geeky about like the different types of research things that I get into. Like, we looked at like medical and police archives today, thinking about like where are the images of trans people. But I can't. A couple of years ago, I went to Greece for the first time,
Mhm.
and I just stayed. I was in a performance festival in like Croatia, I think, and then because I was already over there, I was like, for $50, I could like fly to Athens and stay there for a week. And I used to think I wanted to be like an archaeologist or paleontologist when I was a kid. To me, it makes sense. Like, I go to these places to look at archaeological objects, and I
Mhm.
feel emotional.
Mhm.
Like, I can see the fingerprint of the potter, from like 200 BC. And I just think like that makes me feel
Mhm.
feelings.
Mhm.
But that is perhaps a rarer
Mhm.
occurrence, like a material, like, like, do a ton of people go into the museum and start crying when they see an object?
Mhm.
Sometimes. But I would venture to guess that more often, more people would have an experience with a pop song that would make them cry, or like, do you know what I mean? Like, I could be brought to tears very quickly by listening to a piece of music,
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah.
moving people to emotion.
Yeah, moving people to emotion, transport emotions.
Yeah, another area of our overlap.
Yes,
Yeah.
transport emotions.
All right, shall we stop recording?
Yeah, I think, yeah,
Yeah.
I think